So here we are back with the Junior Pentester. As you know, we still have a long way to finish, and of course, what we finished so far, we finished the intro to pentesting, privilege escalation, metasploit, vulnerability research. As far as intro to web hacking goes, we still have cross-site scripting and command injection. Now, in this video, I got started with Burp Suite. So I told myself, should I cover all of these rooms in one video, or should I cover them one by one? So I split the rooms, one room per video, right? So I've gone back in time to my channel and I found that I have already covered Burp Suite Basics for beginners, and it was part of the CompTIA Pentest Plus on TryHackMe. So this video is 1 hour. It covers everything on Burp Suite, all right? But I just covered everything quickly without detailed teachings. So I found these rooms here and I told myself, let's cover these rooms one so that we cover one room per video. All right, so we go over the basics, the proxy basics, then we go to repeater, intruder, and other modules in a detailed fashion so that you can get the most out of it. So if you want to get back to this video to cover the basics before we start these, you are free to do that. But if you don't need to, if you want you're just getting started, you don't need to watch this video. You can just watch the series that I'm about to publish so that we solve these rooms one by one. So the first one is the basics. And in the basics room, you get familiar with the interface, the GUI, the navigation, the key bindings, and of course we start with the proxy. Never mind the room, all right? The only thing you care about as far as the room comes is answering the questions. So I'm gonna wrap all of these tasks in short 10 minutes or 15 minutes, explain you the basics. Of course, we're gonna go over the proxy first in a way that you will know what to do when you have a target to scan or when you have something to work, when you have something to use with Burp Suite. So let me take this to the left. All right, so this is Burp Suite, you know that. Now, basically, most of you know the navigation, the objective of every tab in the navigations. Now, normally when you open Burp Suite, we see this interface. See here, these are the tasks, what is being done or what is running with Burp Suite, basically all the tasks, the live ones, the past ones. Now here the event log, what you did with Burp Suite, and here are the issue definitions. The issue definitions list all of the vulnerabilities or application vulnerabilities. Now you can also click on every one of these vulnerabilities and read description on that. Now the use of this tab or this interface here actually is only limited to the pro version. In the community version, you get to read the details of every vulnerability, but the full use of that comes when you use Burp Suite Professional. So you will have the automated vulnerability scanner, and in this interface, it will list out all of the vulnerabilities found in the web application. As you can see, it is pro only. All right, so let me get started with the proxy, how to familiarize yourself with a proxy, and of course how to systematically use that feature in a real world scenario. Never mind the CTFs, never mind any kind of online lab. Before doing so, don't forget to navigate to user options and get yourself familiarized with all of these options. So basically the connections, you have the TLS for the certificates and HTTPS. The display, how the Burp Suite looks, changing the font, changing the theme, and the miscellaneous options regarded to other uses of or other features of Burp Suite. So basically, these options are global. So whenever you do here, whatever business you do here, guys, will be applied to the whole Burp Suite. Now, if you are using Burp Suite Professional version, you get to use the project options. You get to create projects, save projects. So if you are using the Burp Suite Professional, you're more likely to use the project options tab. The project options apply only to the projects you just created. And because we're using the community edition here, we can't create a project, right? We are only limited to the temporary project, which we cannot save. So really the project options here can be of use, but not all the time. Most of the time you will use the project options if you are using the pro version and you have multiple projects. So you want settings specified or settings specific to the projects. So whatever you do here will override the settings you do on the user options. All right, now let's go back to the proxy. So logging out of scope, proxy traffic is disabled. All right, okay. So before using the proxy, guys, we just go to target, define what is the target that we are trying to test. So in my case, if you deploy the machine, you will have an IP address. So navigating to the IP address, you have a website. Now, when you are doing web application penetration testing, you want your testing to be limited only to the targets that you are dealing with. So you don't want to intercept requests or get drowned the here the log history, the URL history tab with requests going in and out, right? So you want Burp Suite to only log and intercept requests made to your target. So it is very important to define a target scope in your testing. So for example, in this case, or in the scenario here, my target is this IP address. So what I do here, I go to Burp Suite first, I go to target tab, and first I find the scope and add it to the scope. So you click on add, and you type in the website or the IP address that you would like to test. So once you add this to the list on the scope, you can exclude everything else. So this means that Burp Suite will only log URLs, only URLs requested to that website, okay? So anything you do with other websites, all visits to other websites will not be logged in the URL history here, or in the in the URL history here. This is very beneficial if you want to get back to the pages that you have visited and you want to look over the other pages. So if you want to, this is the list of all of the pages that I have visited in the web application or the website. So if I don't want the list here to be mixed with other websites I visit or I happen to visit in the browser, so I would add the URL to the scope list. Another way of adding a website to the scope list is, you see here, once you visit a website, it will be added in the sitemap here section. So you can right click and click on add to scope. Because I have added this to scope previously, the option won't show now. It will only show me remove from scope. Let me remove for now and re-add. So you see the option here, add to scope. Okay, so it has been added to the scope now. Okay, now let's try. Before we try, okay, so now what we did actually is adding one target to the scope, which means, as I said earlier, all of the requests made to that target will be logged here, and all other requests to other targets or other URLs will not be logged in the URL history. What about the proxy? If I want the request only made to that target to be logged, and any other requests made to other websites won't be intercepted by the proxy, what I can do, we can go to options under the proxy, and of course, locate intercept client requests. Make sure that intercept request based on the following rules is checked. Now you can add many rules here. So this rule can be added. You can click on add, then go to URL and make sure is in target scope. You add this, it will be added here. What does this mean? It means that only requests made to your target, which is in your target scope here, will be intercepted by the proxy. Let's take an example. Let's go to Intercept and try to visit a website that is not any other website, right? So Google. So see, now I was able to go to Google without any problem, without any kind of request being intercepted. So the request wasn't being intercepted, right? As you can see, nothing here. And if I go to HTTP history, scroll down, as you can see, my visit to Google was not logged. If I go to targets, go to scope, I go to sitemap, scroll down, nothing in here. So I have been successful in filtering the requests to include only requests made to my target. This is very beneficial if you are testing multiple targets or one target and you don't want to get jammed with other requests or other visits you make to other websites. So the first thing you do all the time is to define a target. Okay, before just intercepting and hacking, right? Define a target in your scope, add it to your scope, exclude everything else, and make sure that you intercept requests only made to the target using this rule. Test your work and then begin hacking. So that's all about it, right? That's the methodology. All right, so let's see here. What are the questions? Okay, so we have an example attack here. I will leave all other tasks to you guys because there is no practical part. The only practical part is in task 14 and 15. So in the example attack, I don't know why it is auto-loading. All right. So we have here how many? No questions here, but it is worth trying what has been outlined here. So if we go to the contacts, or contacts, yeah, go to contacts. So this is the intercept. We're gonna make this off for now. So support. Okay, so we have contact email and we have a query here. So this form has been created for the purpose of testing for cross-site scripting. Now this room is not for cross-site scripting, but we will make cross-site scripting a test case to use the proxy in Burp Suite. So what we can do now, we can intercept is on and refresh the page. You see we received the request here in the proxy tab. Now what we can do here, we can modify on the request, we can change in the request and then send it back to the web application. That's the benefit of the proxy here. We can just modify on the request, we can modify on the user agent, we can modify on the content. Whatever you see here in the headers, you can change on that. You can change on this. Now, one useful feature in the proxy tab is you can highlight the request and right-click, do intercept the response to this request. This will give you an overview of the response in HTML before displaying the page. So if you click on that forward, I see here here is the response from the web application, but in a coded format. And you click forward. See, there is another one to that URL. We're going to talk about this later. Follow, forward. Okay. So we have a support form here. So we can take the example payload here, which is used for reflected cross-site scripting, and try to input that in the contact email. You see, whatever I try here, it's getting removed on its own because there is some sort of filter that rejects certain characters from the inputs. So in order to bypass this, we have to use URL encoding. Now, if I go back and enable the intercept, so let's put some legitimate characters, pentester at localhost.com, say this is test, submit query. So once we submit the query, we see we have the request here, and also we have additional parameters have been added to the request that we can modify. So we have the email and we have the contents. So because the application has a filter to rule out specific characters from the email field, now we get to change it. We have the opportunity to change whatever we want on the parameters. So I would like to change on the email, so I highlight that and put my payload. This is a simple XXS reflected payload. Now, As I said earlier, because there is a filter, I have to change on that payload because it's not acceptable by the application. So one way to change that is to URL encoded. So we can highlight this, and using the key binding or the shortcut Control U, I can automatically apply URL encoding on the string. This is one way. Another way is doing that. Okay, so now we send the request, or click on Intercept is on to disable the intercept. As you can see, we were able to successfully pop out an XSS attack or alert warning. Click on OK, and this is done. So again, this is not an XSS room, okay? But this is an example of using the proxy tab. Go back to the room. The last one is a challenge. Example attack, room conclusion. There was the task that was, yeah, this is a task. So in this task, we're required to find a flag and answer a conceptual question. So for this flag, okay, let me get back to Burp Suite. Intercept is off. Now, if you go to target and go to sitemap, you see here, this is your target. And when you go to your target and visit the internal pages, everything you do on the target is being logged in the URL history. At the same time, the Burp Suite will create a sitemap containing all of the links for your target, which means you can get something, I'm not going to say a full sitemap, but the more you click on the site, the more you visit the site, the more you explore and navigate through the site, the more Burp Suite will be able to create a sitemap containing all of the links of the site. Of course, in the Burp Suite Professional, there is an option to create, or there's an option to spider the site. So you will be able to create a full sitemap of all of the links and the URLs. But that unfortunately is not offered in the community version. You have to manually visit the pages and then get back. You see here, it creates a list of all of the URLs it was able to crawl and find. So the question is asking, find a URL that contains the flag. So see, we have the tickets, we visit the tickets, products, privacy. There is something here that stands out. If you click on that, you see here the request, get request to this URL, and if you scroll down, you are able to, or you get the chance to just examine the request and also examine the web application response to that request. So the response, the content of the response contains your flag. This is similar to you visiting the URL and getting back the content on your page, the content displayed back to you. So that is for this answer. It's a question. Now the next one is a question for what is the typical severity of a vulnerable JavaScript dependency? Now, as we said earlier, in the community edition, you cannot do vulnerability scanning, right? Only in the pro version. But if you go to issue definitions, here are the list of all of the vulnerabilities that Burp Suite will go through when you scan a target. Now, in the community edition, you get only to examine the list. In the pro version, you will be able to see the list, examine the list, and also conduct automated scanning. So for the question, it is inquiring about specific vulnerability and what is the severity of that vulnerability. If you scroll down, you see the requested one is actually in the list, vulnerable JavaScript dependency. The severity is low. If you read the description here, the use of third-party JavaScript libraries can introduce a range of DOM-based vulnerabilities, including some that can be used to hijack user accounts like DOM XSS. This is low. It's not very common, but this is the answer for your question. Now, nothing else to answer as far as the practical part is concerned. You only have to task 13 and 14 for practical aspects. Now the other tasks are theoretical or conceptual. I'm gonna just show you the answers. So these are the answers for task. Let me get to task 2. And also you have task 3, for the features, proxy, intruder, installation, no questions, dashboard, no questions, navigation, no questions, options. You have some questions, easy to answer. You can just go over the readings and answer these, but if you don't want to go over the readings, you just want the answers, you can see here. Intro. Okay, about the key bindings. So if you go to the user options, there is an option here to control the key bindings. Yeah, the hotkeys. So if you are a fan of shortcuts, right, you can take a look at the list here and configure your shortcuts. For example, send to repeater, Control R. Send to intruder, Control I. Edit the hotkeys. For example, I use a shortcut to encode the URL. You scroll down, look for Control U. So Control U, URL encode key characters. Some of these features or some of these actions, you won't find them by right-clicking on the string or using the right click. So it's very beneficial to go over that or have them in a sheet where you are able to examine the features and the corresponding key bindings if you don't find that in a right click or in the tabs. Alternatively, you can go to a cheat sheet page. This cheat sheet page contains most common key bindings or shortcuts for Burp Suite and the corresponding action, right? So if you work a lot with Burp Suite, it's very beneficial to have this list. Okay, so that was for today. We will examine next the repeater and other parts of Burp Suite in a detailed fashion, of course, and methodologically. So if you want, let's say you are doing pen testing, we will introduce these features from a pen testing point of view, not from an education point of view, right? So we will assume that you are doing pen testing. So I'm going to go over the steps one by one and see how you conduct that in real world. So that's it for today, and see you in the next video.